So this is the repo. This is today's repo. So I'm just going to go through the motions. I'm going to clone it, pop my terminal, move to a cozy spot. Very important. This first step of moving to the right spot, you never want to clone a project inside another project accidentally. That's the beginning of the end. Okay, git clone. All right, the thing as GP, moving into GP, firing VS Code. Popping terminal, just smoke testing things a little, get status. All right, so on branch main, this is looking good. Take a look at the README. All right, the standard fare, npm install, npm start. And this only makes sense because there is a package.json with a project. If your project does not contain a package.json, then it doesn't make sense to do npm install, okay, my friends? So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. npm I is the shortcut for npm install. Okay, excellent. And npm start. Hello, npm start. Apologies. Let's see what we got. All right, okay. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. So we are basically going to use a function to encapsulate all the dumb surgery that goes into creating one of these. Okay, so that is the bulk of the class will be done performing that task. And let me repeat. The purpose of the class is to build a function, and this function takes raw data as its food, right? And is going to return a bunch of HTML elements that kind of look like this. All right. So the fact that you can see this right now is because it is hard-coded in the HTML, but we are going to comment it out from the HTML in just a minute, okay? But this is kind of like a big task. This is a large function we need to build in order to accomplish this. So I figure we kind of introduce the topic with a less ambitious objective, all right? So if you turn over to VS Code, let's see. No, we don't need the README anymore. npm start is chugging along, and let me do my little rep start. You don't need to do this, by the way. Okay, cool. Cool, so I'm moving inside the source folder, and we have an index.js as usual, and the big task of the day is broken into tasks 1, 2, 3, etc., all the way to 9, all right? And number 10 is stretch. We'll see if we have time for that. Okay, but before we even get started, we're gonna all make some room above task 0. Would it be task -1? And let's discuss, let's demo the whole process in just a couple of minutes, if possible, right? So, so the idea here is that we start with data. Imagine const some data. Okay, this data will come from a server, but for today's purposes, we are just going to hard code it right here. Okay, for example, foo, comma, bar, comma, baz, comma, fizz. All right, so let's imagine for a second. And tomorrow we will learn how to actually bring this stuff from a real server. Okay, but for today, let's imagine this is raw data from a data server, right? And the idea is that we build a little function that can take one of these and construct a div that contains the word foo, okay? Then of course we're going to loop over the entire array, constructing divs as we go. But first things first, let's create a function called div maker, okay? And div maker takes a piece of text, right? And perhaps a color to make things a little bit more interesting. Now, in order to make a div, we need to use document.createElement. Okay, so everybody, and I know this is going a little bit fast, but the idea is that you see like the whole lecture in under 3 minutes, if possible, right? And then we can go about it more slowly. So make a const, call it the new div or something, the new div, and have this be document create element invoked. Right? It's a method, one of the many methods we can find in the DOM, and create element takes a string with the name of the element we want to create, in this case a div, right? So now we have a real div saved inside this variable, but this particular div is like super sad. It doesn't have any text, it doesn't have any attributes, it doesn't have much of anything. Right? So the next step would be to make the new div more interesting by setting attributes, right? For, or I don't know, class list.add nice dash div or something. Oh, that's a terrible class name. And then we would the new div dot, I don't know. Oh, of course, text content equals y, the text, of course, right? So when we utilize the div maker, we will be passing it a string as the first argument, the string that's intended to become the text content of the div. So there goes the text. Okay, and now that our div is done, we must return it. Return the new div, and we're done. Okay. Then again, ESLint is warning me that color is defined but never used. So I guess we could use the color. Any suggestions? I'm looking at Slack through the corner of my eye. How might we use that color inside of this function? Excellent, excellent. I'm just stealing from you. Let's steal from William. And William and many of you are saying, hey, well, you know, take the advantage to set the color of the new div to be that color injected through arguments, right? So that is it. This is done. This is called a component. Component takes raw data, returns DOM element or elements. All right. Cool. And this is instantiation. Right. This is adding attributes, adding text, adding inline styles, whether that is a good thing. Let's discuss that some other day. And very important, of course, don't forget to return something from your function. Otherwise, that's by returning is the only way we can give data to whomever tries to use the div maker. Okay. Now, the div maker is very easy to use. We simply make a variable to save the product of the div maker. Let's call it I don't know, div. Okay, const div equals div maker, and pass it a piece of text like lambda, and color like red, something like that. Now we theoretically have a piece of DOM. We have an element now, okay, with a class name, with text content, with even with an inline style. I guess we could even console log it a little bit. Okay. And there it is. Ooh, this is looking good. This is looking good. But it is detached from the DOM. So the last step is simply append it somewhere in the DOM, right? Like document dot body dot prepend, so it ends up at the top, right? So we don't have to scroll. Prepend div, okay, and there it is. So we built ourselves a little machine we can use, right, to construct divs, right? So we can do, hey, const div 2 web 36, right? And Let's make this green. Okay. And then, of course, we need to append it to the DOM. Okay. Isn't that neat? Isn't that neat? And it seems like a lot of work. And it is. Vanilla DOM manipulation has always had this fame of being kind of awkward, all right? But it is still quite powerful, because if you want to just hard code it in the HTML, you need to know ahead of time what it is you want to hard code in the HTML. With JavaScript, we can fetch data from a server over the network that contains an unknown amount of information, and we can use our little markup builder, our little component, to simply generate as many pieces as we need, and then of course we would append them to the DOM. Okay. So we have this data. Let's imagine it comes from the internet. Okay. We could do some data dot for each string. Okay. We would do the exact same steps we did right here. Use the component, attach the thing to the DOM, right? So we would do const div is div maker invoked with a string and perhaps the color gray, right? And then document up prepend the div. Okay. Any ideas? Oh, of course. Document body. Thank you. I know someone noticed. Okay. Oh, I have to remember to kind of whenever I make a mistake, I have to remember to be like, oh, I did it on purpose, so you can catch the mistake. Okay, what do you say now? What do we say now about the usefulness of components versus simply hard coding things in the HTML? I want some feedback. What do you think? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Tell the truth. This is too much work for simply a little div, or this seems promising. Probably helpful for larger projects, very useful for large scale, seems pretty powerful. I prefer using functions to specific elements. Less room for bugs down the line. Okay, yes, more practical. Granular code makes for less repetition. So all of it is true. It's cool for large projects. For smaller projects, it would take up a lot of time. Good for things that change, like quizzes and stuff. Powerful for making it mutable. Yes, excellent. All of those thoughts are true, okay? So the more complicated the UI we need to generate, and the more of it we need to generate, okay? And the more unknown the data, okay? So the more useful it becomes, this whole idea of just encapsulating the boring stuff. Because the most horrible part of this code is probably the guts of the function, okay? But that's the point of functions, sometimes, to encapsulate the little pieces of nastiness and turn them into shiny little tools. So this is now a shiny little tool that takes a piece of text, color, and returns an element which we can then append. Okay. Looking at Slido. Why doesn't the div show at the bottom of the page? Yes, because we used prepend. Where did it go before prepend? So before prepending or appending, right? So the thing is not even attached to the document anywhere. It's just floating in memory. So this div lives in memory. And as we saw, because it's attached to a variable, we can console log it, okay, and we can see it. Okay, these are for, but of course we either append child or append or prepend or insert adjacent element. There's a set of tools that allows to attach to the DOM little pieces of UI like that. Okay. Juan, why would we want to create elements and attributes through JavaScript rather than HTML? Oh, Juan, I'm so glad you asked. Now, a history lesson. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. All right. So this brings us back to what we started discussing yesterday in terms of single-page applications, also known as websites that look and feel like desktop applications, okay, and give a really good user experience and are very powerful. Now, the cycle of life of this architecture we're learning to implement goes like this. Everything starts at the client, which is Chrome. Okay, a request goes out to a server, to cats.com. And the server responds with an index.html. This index.html is not fully constructed because we don't know ahead of time what we want to put in it, right? So in order to hard code everything we need in the HTML, right, we would have to be here and we would have to know at all times what goes in that index HTML. By simply returning a very empty index HTML, we kind of like offload that problem from this particular server. So in single page application world, cats.com responds with a very bare bones index.html that is not fully constructed. Okay, so Chrome parses that HTML and of course trips our script tag containing our program, the programs we are learning to write here in Unit 2. Okay, these programs make requests for raw data to specialized servers that deal in data only. Okay, in the old world, this server would do all the work, would simply return fully constructed HTML pages. Okay, but in the new world, there are many possible consumers for the data, not just websites, but also refrigerators and cell phones and who knows what. Okay, so it makes sense to divorce these two and have this little web server serve up very bare bones pages that don't have the data and don't have most of the UI. Okay, and let the JavaScript fetch the raw data from this dedicated server, and then when the data is returned, our JavaScript performs DOM surgery to construct the UI via components. So today we live our life here on step 6. We're simulating that the data is in the program already, right? So we're going to cheat a little bit. We'll deal with networking tomorrow. Today we simulate that we have the data on hand and use components to build out the different pieces of the page. Okay. Ooh, many more questions. Let's see. Can you put the div in the middle of the page in a specific place? You absolutely can. So Google MDN insert adjacent HTML. Insert adjacent HTML is more powerful than prepend and append because you can target any element in the DOM and then the thing you wish to insert, you can be like, oh, right before that thing, or right after that thing begins, or right before that thing ends, or right after that thing ends. Okay, so insert adjacent element. Okay, research that one. More questions. Christopher says, with this style of using components, do you build your components initially and then use them as you build your larger structure? Okay, so ideally, what happens, okay, and this is a very fun process, by the way, especially when it works out. Ideally, there's a designer that designs all the pieces of the website. Like, for example, navs or cards that have a picture and a piece of text and links and input elements and buttons, right? So there's a designer that has designed ahead of time all of the repeatable pieces of the website. Okay, so anything that can go on a website, on the application, is designed ahead of time by the designer. And then us, as front-end developers, we build functions that are able to construct each of these pieces, all right, in a repeatable way, right? So we might need, so say this is a card with somebody's picture and a bunch of information. So we can build a function that takes raw data and builds one of these off of this raw data, okay? So this function can be used many times across the entire application, okay? So each little piece of UI has kind of like a function associated with it that can consume raw data and construct that particular piece, okay? So these functions act like turbo template in a way, right? A plain template is just a thing with gaps in it, right? A template has gaps in it and you fill out those gaps. So a function is even more powerful because the function can take through arguments whatever data you want to put inside those gaps. And then the function fills out the gaps and just hands you the fully constructed element. It's a very powerful way to work. Okay. And with React, and we cannot do this with a raw DOM because it would be too freaking difficult. But with React, it is super easy to come in and nest these different pieces instead of each other. All right. So we can decompose the UI really however we see fit. Okay. Whew, brutal. Okay, how would this work with media queries, responsiveness? Just the same. The inserted elements follow the exact same rules, and they can be targeted by regular style sheets. So there's no problem with media queries or anything like that. I think I accidentally killed one of the questions and I didn't mean to. Joshua asks, what does it mean for something to be floating around in memory? It means that, it means exactly that. It means this piece of data on this line, before we attach on this line, the product of this function, the return value of div maker, which is basically DOM elements, are stored in the computer's memory. And the variable acts as a finger that points to that region of memory. Okay, so if we didn't have the variable, we wouldn't have a way to reach for those elements, right? Because, yeah, I hope that that didn't make it worse. Okay, let's answer a few more and go for a break. When you create a div in the JavaScript file, how can you use CSS on it? Oh, because, sure. I mean, remember, let's expand the div maker again. I apologize for keeping it hidden, okay? The div maker can attach predefined class names to it. So it can be targeted by regular CSS, all right? So for example, let's see. You know, I'm moving now to styles.css. What class name did we give it? Nice div, right? So we can, I don't know, do nice dash div, right? And have that be font size 2em or something like that, okay? And now we made our divs twice as big, okay? So the product built from these components can be targeted with just plain CSS. It's just not a problem. Okay. Okay, let's take a break. We'll finish answering questions right after we come back, okay? Thank you all. See you in 5. Okay, my friends, we are back in business. Ready to rock and roll. Let's see. Okay. Sheesh. Okay, we'll continue on. We'll go back to the Slido. We'll go back to the Slido in a little bit, but for now, it's time for you to work and for me to just sit back and relax, which is what I do best. Okay, so let's take a look at the task as 0 here again, and this is the meat. This is the meat of the lecture. If you kind of understand this flow, you're okay. And if you don't understand this flow fully yet, it's all right. A little bit of practice is what it takes, okay? So task 0, my friends, is going for you to build a function called image maker, right? And it's going to take an image URL. You have to instantiate the image element, add its source attribute, and then of course don't forget to return it, okay? And after that function is done, you are going to take the image data and you are going to loop over it. All right, I'm just scaffolding the exercise for you. For each image URL, you are going to make an actual image, make an image with your component, and then you're going to attach it to the DOM somewhere. Okay. How much time do you think you need? There's a little complication too, because the pieces of data we start with are a little more complicated. It's not just an array of strings like we had before. Now we have an array of objects we need to loop over, okay? So yeah, I'm gonna start a timer and let you suffer. No, I mean, work on the problem. I don't know, 7 minutes perhaps? All right, we have a bunch of options already. No one else dares? Work in progress is also fine. Nice. Okay, I say we take a look at some of the options. I say we take a look at some of the options. I'm so impatient. Let me know in the feedback if I should have let the timer run out. I feel like perhaps it was too much time. Okay, so let's steal from Marcos. All right. Let's see if I can grab. And Marcos proposes the following, right? And bum 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 bum. Unexpected token. Unexpected token. Let's see. What is this unexpected token? What did we break? What did we break? Oh, probably missing. Bam. There we go. You all saw it. Great job, everybody. Yeah. So it seems like my, oh yeah, and missing parentheses. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh man, great job, Marcos. Marcos is my favorite student forever until I find a new one. Okay, so I'm looking through everybody's code here, and I see variations of the same thing. Everything looks good. And Joe even added extra attributes, went above and beyond. Okay, great job, everybody. So see, components are not a huge deal, right? Of course, we can make them fancier. We can make them fancier because we can add event listeners to them, or we can instantiate several elements and nest them inside each other, which we will in a second. All right. But this is the meat. This is it, right? And again, once you start working with React, it's rare that you'll want to do something like this by hand. Okay, just to give you a little bit of context, I'm going to show you what Marcos's image creator would look like in React. Okay, so doing the exact same thing in React would simply be function image, right? So React components are still functions. Their names are capitalized, and they take some sort of data object through arguments, right? And then we simply return an image element, okay, with say, well, actually, image is self-close, right? There, not going to hurt anything, okay? But this this image is going to take its source from the data, from data.source. Okay. Of course, from the data injected through arguments. All right. Of course, the project doesn't compile anymore because React involves this funky syntax that kind of looks like HTML. And this particular project is not set up to compile that correctly, so I'm just going to comment it out so we don't break anything. But you get the idea. Okay. In a similar fashion, Or div maker in React would be simply something like a function called div maker, capitalized div maker, and it would take a single argument called data, right? And everything we want to inject into the function would be nested inside that object. Okay. Right. So we would do something like const, and we would pull the text and the color from that data object, right? This is just called the structured assignment. This is just pulling information from the data object and saving it into variables, right? This is what this syntax means. And then we simply return a div, okay, with a text, and the style would look like an object, and the color would be the color coming in through arguments, okay? And again, you might say, well, it's not that huge advantage. Well, the React version is like half of the vanilla JavaScript version, but the larger the component, the greater the difference becomes, okay? So very looking forward to that. But for today, we deal with the vanilla JavaScript. So I'm going to, now we're going to start with task 1. And we're going to build the big component, Now that we have kind of warmed up and have a little bit of, have a top level 2,000 feet idea of what components are, all right? Going back to Slido, let's finish our questions before we get started building these panels down here. Sam is asking, so the entire purpose of constructing web pages with JavaScript is to increase speed and avoid having to ask for too much information. Yeah, well, yes. I mean, it is economical because the index HTML loads once, never reloads, and then the JavaScript requires just the information it needs to update the page. So you can say you're correct. Andrew says, so this is kind of like what inside Bootstrap. Honestly, I'm not sure. So Bootstrap is a bunch of style sheets plus a little bit of JavaScript. All right. So that little bit of JavaScript for sure is doing vanilla DOM manipulations. Whether those DOM manipulations are packaged into functions, honestly, I'm not sure. Thomas, if you have too many items floating in Java in memory, does that slow down load times? So what slows websites the most is the network communication. Unless there's a disaster in the code, any performance problems from the code should be orders of magnitude less impactful than just the delays over the network. Okay, so again, unless we do something highly inefficient, like working with huge arrays and making deeply nested loops or something like that, we needn't worry about performance too much. So load times slow down when our programs become huge, right? So if our JavaScript program becomes large and it uses 20,000 libraries, each of them large, we can end up with a ball of JavaScript. Okay, going back to here. The ball of JavaScript that needs to be downloaded here, right? So the Chrome parses the HTML, encounters the script tag, obviously, and downloads the JavaScript. So if the JavaScript is huge, several megabytes large, well, that's gonna slow down the startup of the application seriously, particularly for mobile devices with weaker CPUs and bad networks and so on and so forth. Okay. Adam, so this is Vanilla.js. Yes, what we're doing can be called Vanilla.js because we're not using any libraries or anything like that. This is just, I mean, a lot of the things, some of the things we do with the DOM are not in the JavaScript language specification. All right, so the features of the JavaScript language do not comprise all of the DOM stuff, right? So the DOM stuff is DOM stuff and it's its own specification. but we're still calling it all just vanilla JavaScript because we're not using any libraries to help us do DOM surgery, okay? All right, okay, my friends, so I'm gonna start commenting out things so we simplify the page a little bit, okay? So I'm just going to comment out the spots where we are basically attaching things to the DOM so we can, there. Okay, cool. Let's see if we have a, so everybody comment out whatever you need to comment out to go back to the initial state, okay? Give you a second to do that. And if you're done with that, take a look at the designs so we have an idea of what it is that we're building. And of course, comment out. If you've copied out the React code, just make sure to comment it out because JavaScript cannot deal with this. This definitely isn't vanilla JavaScript, this thing that looks like HTML inside the JavaScript. I'm going to add a few comments while you fix up the project. React component, all right, and React component. Okay. Cool. So, taking a look at the design, so each of these panels contains text that starts its life hidden. All right, so we will have to juggle class names to make that magic happen. Okay, when the text is visible, the arrow points upwards. When the text is collapsed, the arrow points downwards. Right. So these are actually two distinct, different buttons which we will build. Right. So it's just that in this situation, the arrow down is hidden. In this situation, the arrow up is hidden. Okay. So we will have to deal with event handlers to make the text appear and so on and so forth, all right? And this requires raw data from the server. So the title of the panel and the text of the panel for each of the panels, all of that is coming from a server. And the HTML doesn't know ahead of time how many panels there might be on a given day, okay? So the index HTML will be minimalistic and our JavaScript will take care of fetching the data and constructing the DOM. Right? And we will build a panel maker that is capable of building one of these. And then we will loop over an array of data, constructing panels. That is on the menu. It's exactly the same what we did before, just a little bit more involved because there are more pieces to this particular component. It's just not a simple div, okay? All right, so I'm assuming you have successfully commented out any extras so we can work with a clean slate and that you have an idea of what it is we're trying to build. So I believe the first step involves task one. Actually we need to comment out this existing panel. Well, I guess we don't need to comment it out. We could just leave it there, but let's just comment it out. Head over to index.html and see where it says remove this. You don't need to delete it. Just we're going to comment it out because you see this is the HTML we're going to generate with vanilla JavaScript. And you're going to see how tedious it becomes when you have to build lots of a very sophisticated component with lots of elements inside. All right. So take note of the class names that will be required, right? So the top level div is a class of panel, and then panel bar contains the title and the buttons. And beside the panel bar, we have panel content, right? So the panel content is the text that can either show or hide, right? So it seems like this class name controls whether the contents are visible or not, okay? And here are the two buttons, but at a given time, only one shows. And I'm not sure what's up with the weird, I'm not sure what's up with that. But you can see at all times, one of these buttons is hidden through means of this hide btn class name. All right. So after studying this thing, comment it out. We'll keep it here for reference, but we're going to build the whole thing with JavaScript. Or rather, you're going to build the whole thing with JavaScript. Okay. So back inside index.js, we need to import the data. We need to hydrate our component because this data is rather big, and it would be pretty nasty to have it in this same file. But again, we're simulating a little bit, fetching data from the server. This data we're going to import would be the data coming from the server, okay? If you need to see it, under source, where it says data, take a look at panel data, right? Take a look at panel data and check it out. Way more complicated than the array of strings we had at first and the array of objects we had later for the links, all right, for the images, right? So each of these objects powers an individual panel, right? So when we finish our loop at the end of the class, we will be left with 4 panels, right? Each with the title and content, okay? Now, this information is living on a separate file, okay? So we could either copy and paste. We could either copy and paste this thing to the other file, okay? And if npm start isn't working for you, you will have no choice but to copy and paste this information to index.js. However, if your npm start is working properly, all you need to do is import panel data from, and here's a relative path starting from where we're at. Everybody fingers on keyboards. Starting from current location, go into data and go into panel data. Okay, just like that. Pretty magical, huh? Now, if you console log panel data, we should see, where's our page? Okay, there's the panel data. Okay. So we don't need to have all the data. We don't need to have all the data in the same file. Okay. Now, if it doesn't work for you because your npm start is just not working, again, you will have to copy and paste that variable right in here. Okay. Now, we need more pieces of information from other files. So take a look at where it says constants. Okay. These are those arrows for the buttons. This is the arrow pointing downwards, and this is the arrow pointing upwards, right? So this in HTML, Chrome will render these strange-looking strings as arrows, right? And it would absolutely suck to have to pepper our code base with strings as horrible as these, right? So we save them into variables instead of this constants file, and then we export an object containing these 2 awkward strings, right? And the way we import it is equivalent. Import, I don't know, constants from current location /data /constants. Okay. Now, if we console log the constants, we should see there's the arrows. See how they render? Okay. So this will become super important. The more days advance, the more we will need to connect different JavaScripts together. Now, part of the job of the compiler is to kind of like concatenate these different JavaScripts into a single ball of JavaScript. Going back to the performance conversation we were having before. If we have 20,000 big files connected together, they will, through imports and exports, after the compiler is done, we will be left with a very big ball of JavaScript, all right? Now, you can see what the arrows are actually open and closed properties instead of the object. And if you're getting any errors with the imports, you have no choice but to copy and paste those these pieces of information, just copy and paste them into the index.js and come visit me during office hours and we'll figure out what's wrong with your npm start. One desperate thing you can try is to simply Control C npm start and run it again. Okay, see if that helps. All right, there's the array, there's the arrows. Okay, my friends, so let's make more variables. Const open equals constants.open. Right? CVS Code trying to help. Const close equals constants.close. Okay, so now we have all the information needed to power our components. Okay, so we are kind of like ready to start building our component. Okay, so let's make sure, let's go through the tasks. Task 2, verify our imports through log statements. Yeah, you should do that if you haven't already, right? In task 3, comment out the div panel from index.js. We did that already. And grab its parent element. We didn't do that. We didn't grab the parent element. Okay, so the parent element of the panel is where we will insert all of our panels, right? So, but let's take a 5-minute break and continue after. That also gives you a chance to troubleshoot problems with your imports and gives you a little bit of oxygen to just copy and paste these pieces of data over to index.js if you need to. Okay, see you in 5, my friends. Okay, my friends, we are back and the show is on. Okay, so the panel is gone from the page, but we have the data needed to generate these panels with raw JavaScript. And that is exactly what we're going to do. So let's see. Let's verify our imports using log statements. Okay, we can delete those and just log the pieces we actually need: panel data and the open arrow and the close arrow, right? And by the way, there's a little bit of syntax you saw me do in React, okay? Because this is a very frequent operation that needs to happen. With ES6 came out new syntax that does the exact same thing, okay? Open, comma, close equals constants. Okay? I'm going to comment it out, otherwise it's going to be a compilation error because we're declaring identical constants twice with a const keyword, all right? But instead of taking two lines to pull two variables from the same object with the repetition of the word open and the repetition of the word close, we can just do it in a single line just like that. If you're feeling adventurous, you can comment out those and comment in the more modern way, okay? And again, this is not an object. This line is just the equivalent of doing those two lines up there, okay? So this is called destructuring. So this is one term you should Google, okay? So we're done with task 2. Now I'm going to let you all find this accordion thing where we need to inject our panels, all right? So I'm starting a thread. Get me some place to anchor our panels. Excellent. William delivers, as always. Bam. Okay, so there's the accordion. It would be good practice to just console log the accordion as a matter of course, right? To just don't proceed coding without checking your values that they're supposed to. All right, so there's the accordion. And if you expand the accordion, it even contains the stuff we commented out. Great job, William. Great job, Coyote. So far, so good. Task 4, we need to burn through this. We're not doing that well with time. Okay, great job, Maxwell. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Now, yeah, a lot of the tasks happen inside the body of the function, right? So if you collapse this function make panel, you can see task 4 is the last task outside of the function, and then tasks 5 through 9 are all steps that need to happen inside of make panel, okay? So we have to create a function make panel or panel maker that creates a panel exactly as we see it in the HTML. Yeah, all right. So it needs to end up looking exactly like we see here. All right. So the first question is, what data does the panel need? Basically, give me a good name or names. Give me arguments for this function. Give me arguments for this function. Take a look at the panel data if you want for inspiration, or take a look at the HTML. But this make panel, same as the components we built earlier, apologies for all the scrolling, we need raw data injected into this function. So give me argument or arguments. Paste a replacement for my line 73 it is, 73. And that is task 4. Maddie says title content. Title, comma, content. We could always, we could also do it React style. The React style would have the function take a single object called panel data, right? And that panel data contains those pieces of information, right? But this is also cool. Meg suggests title content. Chaz is suggesting panel item, open, close. So Chaz is suggesting a different approach. Ah, I see. I see. I guess we could inject open close just like that. Open, comma, close. Okay. So Chaz is saying, hey, open close are pieces of information that are also needed, right? But there's a difference. There's a difference. Open and close are constants, meaning they will never ever change. Whereas title and content, can be anything. Okay, so with closures, the inside of this function can see these two variables without them. So we don't need to inject those constants there, but I see where you're coming from. Okay, so let's leave it at that and take a look at task 5. And this is super tedious, and I'm going to enlist your work. Okay, now you're going to feel the potential advantage of React. So I'm making a thread, task 5. Come on, I'm counting on you. If I start typing this stuff, we'll stay here till dinner time. Whoa, that pretty impressive. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to steal from Chaz, right? In the meantime, everybody else, you can copy and paste from the terminal, from Slack, but check this out. Check this out. If you double click on the first null, right? So now I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I've highlighted the first null. And now on the Windows, you do Control D. On the Mac, you do Command D, and I'm highlighting all of those nulls at the same time. See those cursors blinking? Now I can type document dot create element invoked, and I figure it's mostly going to be divs, so I'm just going to go ahead and do divs, right? And now I'm going to look at Chaz's for inspiration. Panel is a div, panel bar is a div, panel content is another div, panel title is different. Panel title is an H3. Okay, so make sure you fix panel title, and then there's the buttons. And I'm going to repeat the Control D, Command D technique. I'll double click on that div, Command D, and then button. All right, so super useful shortcut to avoid fussing too much over things like that. But you can see all the hideous repetition happening, right? So yeah, this is quite hard. Now, you can copy from Brendan or Chaz, or you can practice the Control D, Command D technique. Sheesh. Next, set up the structure of our elements. One difference between a large component like this one and the simplistic components we built at the beginning of class is that this one, instead of being a single element, is a lot of elements nested in a certain way. So now we have these pieces of DOM floating in memory, independent from one another, but we're going to start establishing relationships between these different elements. For example, we will start doing panel.append child, the panel bar, right? So you are going to be using append child on a variety of elements until the structure ends up like that, right? So I'm starting a thread and letting you do task 6. You're doing great. You're doing great. And remember, the most important thing is to understand what we're after, right? So in that regard, the first 30 minutes of class were the most important thing. If you feel like you're getting lost with so many steps inside this function so huge, just refer back to the smaller examples. Chaz, brutal. Okay. So let's code review. Let's code review some code. Okay. Excellent, Christopher. I mean, if you can't work this fast, don't sweat it. Okay. I'm going to take some time before moving over to task 7. Okay. So the idea, accordion append child panel. We'll do that at the end. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of that step. All right. So to accordion, we will append the completely finished product. Right. And we will do that outside of the make panel function. So see what I did? So Chaz was suggesting, hey, to the accordion, append the panel. But we don't need to do that here because it's kind of like, remember our little div maker that we built? The appending to the parent happens later and happens outside of the function. All right. Once we have a fully built div, we append it somewhere. All right, so that step of appending the panel to the accordion, we don't need that, but the panel bar and the panel content go inside the panel. The title and the panel buttons go inside the panel bar. All right, let me see. Yep. Okay, are we missing anything? That looks good. That looks good. Okay, so what if we want to troubleshoot what we have so far? Not that we don't trust Chaz, of course. It's not that, never. All right. But it would be a good idea to kind of like execute this function already, right? So I'm going to go underneath task 9, and in this make panel function, let's invoke it the way it's meant to be used, right? And the way it's meant to be used is by receiving a title of the title and a content of the content, something like that. That's how it's meant to be used, right? And perhaps we could console log that thing. Again, not that we don't trust that, but So let's take a look at that. I don't know. This is the old console log. We're getting null. What's going on? I don't know. Any ideas? I'm looking at Slack. Maddie says return panel. What do you mean? You mean? Oh, of course. Excellent. Yes. Of course. I mean, make panel is returning null. Excellent job. So let's return panel, which is the daddy of all those elements in the nesting. Let's return panel, and now we are getting what we wanted. Excellent job. That looks legit to me. Okay, cool. Another way we could troubleshoot this is using a breakpoint. We could simply put a debugger statement inside of there, always making sure DevTools is open at the same time. And inside of here, because the breakpoint is inside the function, we can take a very granular look at all the variables that are going on inside the function, right? So here we can see the arguments being injected inside the function as it is invoked look correct, and the different DOM elements look correct. Okay, so pick your poison. The console log works, but at the same time, if something hadn't worked as expected, all right, a little breakpoint inside the function can give you a better idea of whether some variable inside the function is messed up. All right, blue arrow to get unstuck. Let's get rid of the breakpoint and let's do task 7. Add proper class names to our elements. See index.html for reference. Now this is going to be brutally tedious. Aggravated by the fact that you got to be careful because remember, not all class names should show necessarily because some of the class names are used to toggle the visibility of the thing, right? So panel and panel bar for sure, panel buttons for sure, these two for sure, and one of the buttons must include that one, but not the other. And this probably shouldn't be there because we want our panel to start its life collapsed. So maybe leave this one out, all right? So yeah, go flex your class list muscles with task 7. Okay, my friends. Great job, everybody. Chris, Maddie, Alden, Brendan, and Chas. Who shall we steal from? Who shall become my favorite student for all time until I find a new one? Let's steal from Maddie. Okay. So Maddie's using class list for everything. Class list.add, right? So the panel requires panel, panel bar, panel buttons, panel button open, panel button close. Oh, okay. All right. So you're passing 2 arguments with class list. I can never remember whether class list dot add can take comma separated class names like that or whether you have to wrap them in an array. I can never remember. So that's how it's done. Comma separated class names. I'll buy it. And the panel content takes just panel content. Excellent. I like that. Let's go back to our console log there. And let's see how our panel is coming along. All right. So the heading didn't have any class name. I'll buy it. Cool. Excellent. Let's keep going. You see how terrible this is, right? This is the worst. It is what it is. It is what it is, right? Sometimes it doesn't make sense to use a library or a framework. So we have to be masters of the DOM. We have to be masters of the DOM. Task 8, set the text content using arguments as raw material. So, and also use the open and close arrows imported at the top. Okay, cool. So there's a bunch of, some of these elements require text content. So task 8 is about setting that text content. So let's get that done and take a little break. All right, let's take a look. Christopher, Taz, William, Maddie. Okay, who shall we steal from? Taz. Let's do this. Okay, I have my variables named a little bit differently. So see how the linter, a properly configured linter, is helping a lot here because it says panel item is not defined, which means you and I must be using different variable names. Quite possible, quite possible. Let me steal from Chris. Same story, but again, the linter is immediately letting me know. All right, so if you're not seeing a red squiggly line, make sure to install the ESLint extension to VS Code, ESLint, okay? And with ESLint nice and installed, a properly configured project should have linting in it, all right? So we should have the editor warn us that we're trying to do funky stuff on things that don't exist, okay? It's not your fault, Christopher. We're just using different variable names as you yourself are mentioning. So let's try Maddie's code. I'm so lazy today. I'll just use the Stack Overflow technique. Just copy and paste stuff until it works. No, don't do that. Okay, so Maddie. Okay, so the function, the way it's written on my editor, right? So the function takes title, takes content. So we can say, hey, the text content of the panel title, make that be title. All right. The text content of the panel content, make it be content. Okay. And this is what Chas was mentioning earlier. Shall we inject the open and close variables through arguments also? And there's no need unless we want this component to actually have configurable open and close arrows, right? So we can make components as versatile as we wish. If we wanted these panels to have the ability to have different arrows in them, we would do it the Chas way. Since we don't necessarily need that, we'll just use the closure and the fact that a function is like a car with tinted windows. You can, from the inside, you can see the outside readily. And because these two variables are defined outside of this function, they're visible inside the body of the function. So we'll just settle for that and take a 5-minute break. We're almost done. All right. Bum, 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 ba, bum, bum, ba, bum. We're back. So how are we doing with our panel here? Take a look. And, oh, check it out. Check it out. The title and the content are actually making it, and even the arrows. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, we're so close to being done. Okay. Okay, my friends. Looking at Slido, I haven't been in Slido for a little bit. Let's take a quick look. Let's see. Max, if I wanted to make my own project, I could make a repo, set up my files, and just run npm install and npm start and just build, right? I don't need any obscure libraries. Okay, so, okay. All right, so in order for npm start and npm, so you would have to kind of flesh out the package.json a little bit. I have a recording on scaffolding an application from scratch. I will share it with you, okay, in the channel right after class. Max, Command D only selects one null below to edit, and not all of them. Interesting. No, you have to do Command D repeatedly, right? So do, or Control D, whatever your operating system is, right? So to select the same thing multiple times. So say I want to highlight text content, right? So I double click on text content and then Command D, Command D, Command D, right? As many times as necessary. Okay. More questions. Would it be possible to make like an advent calendar so the card is closed until the day and then it can be toggled open by date? Yeah, sure. We can do. Yeah, that's by the end of the course, we will be only limited by our imagination. Okay. Is there a way to lock it until a certain time so they can't all be open on one day? Okay. There's one thing about the front end, and it's that it's not really secure the way the back end is. So there's the front end, you can always mess with a front end, always, right? So there's no reliable way, I don't think, to kind of like, I don't know. It's an interesting problem. I'll think about it. Okay, my friends, task 9. Let's fix those, let's make these buttons work, all right? And we are going to benefit from propagation today because we have the open button, the close button, and it follows we would need 2 event handlers to make that functionality work. But we don't, actually. We can add a single event handler on the parent of the buttons. We can do panel buttons, add event listener, okay, of click, right? And we don't even need conditional logic or anything like that. All we need to do is do the class name gymnastics that need to be done, which is you, all right? Do your magic so the buttons do what they're supposed to. How about perhaps, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes? And if you want to test it in the DOM, you're free, of course, to, instead of console logging the panel, you're free to append it to the real DOM if you'd like to test your work. All right. Starting a timer. Good luck. This is a harder one. That's not too bad. Joe, you already had a solution with 2 callbacks, with 2 Advent listeners. Excellent. Christopher, Brendan, who shall we steal from? Let's do Christopher. Bam. So Chris says, all right, on the panel buttons on the parent, all right, add the click listener. So we simply toggle class names on these elements. So, okay. All right. Well, that looks legit. We don't know still whether it's going to work or not. Or console log won't tell, I don't think. We would need to actually append it to the DOM. Okay. But there's no errors in the console. There's that. So we're going to just leave this be. Okay. And yeah, if it doesn't work, we can always troubleshoot later. Okay. Now, this one is also for you. We are going to loop through the panel data. All right. So the panel data is here. We imported it on the first task. So the panel data is just a variable that's available in this file. And we're going to loop through it, right? Creating panels for each piece of panel data. Okay. And then append to the DOM. So the last step, once the function is complete, we're already returning the panel. It's looking good. Our dummy test is working. Now we are going to loop over actual data, generating panels as we go, and then appending them to the DOM. Okay, do you need any more hints, or should I just unleash you on task 10? All right, so let's take a look. What do we have? Excellent. So I'm going to copy from your code, right? So basically, you have the panel data somewhere. It's either being imported or you copied and pasted it inside of here. Because it is an array, we can for each object panel, let's call it, for each object panel, perhaps, right? We have to first make a real panel, and the object panel, of course, looks like that. Title and content, that's what I'm referring to as object panel, right? So let's make a real panel, const panel equals make panel. And what are you saying, Brendan? I'm stealing from Brendan. Okay. So make panel takes two arguments, the title and the content. And where's the title and the content? Well, inside the object panel. Excellent. So object panel dot title, comma, object title, object panel dot content. Okay. So there's our panel. If you want to practice destructuring, and I don't want to disorient you too much, right? But if you're curious about destructuring, we could pull title and content out of the object panel using the syntax object panel, right? And then here, all we got to do is make the panel with title and content. Okay, so this is just pulling those properties out of the object, right? So now we have these two variables, the title and the content. So this is not an object. This is like syntax for extracting values out of an object, right? And then the panel, we know it requires the title and content. And then all that remains is use the accordion to append to the DOM. All right, something like that. And let's see if Brendan is correct. Let's see. Make this. Ooh, look at that. Is it working for you? It seems to be working. Does it? Oh, no troubleshooting. It just works. So disappointing. No, just kidding. This is fantastic. It's fantastic. Right? So you can, everything is working as expected, at least on mine. Give me a thumbs up if yours is working as well. Okay. So all right. So I have a question. Yeah, Justin, that also looks good. Excellent. Okay, so I guess my question to you all is, what did we learn today? Because I'm trying hard, but I can't remember any new syntax. We knew how to create elements from scratch. We knew how to modify text contents and attributes, right? So we knew how to append stuff to the DOM. So we knew all of it. So I would like you to tell me in a thread here, in your opinion, what did we learn today exactly? In your own words. How to put everything together is the hardest part. True. How to keep it dry. Also true. Yes. Maxwell, we learned how to use what we learned. Yes. How to lay out components on a site in a usable way. Excellent. That I need to study more. Don't we all? That's what this is for. Okay. Keep it in your bathroom. How to import objects. Well, that is true. That's a piece of new syntax we learned today about imports. It's not official objectives for today, so you don't need it for the afternoon project, and don't worry about it. But imports are super useful. How to properly structure what we learned. Building castles. Yes. Okay, so once you get the hang of it, making components is not hard. Understanding what it is we're trying to build, and also understanding the data we're starting with. Okay, so the raw materials available might take all kinds of shapes, right? So some components will require data in a certain form. Some other components will require data in another form. it's super flexible. You have a lot of freedom, and your components can take all kinds of extra arguments, styling options, colors, sizes, whatever, right? So the creative freedom is infinite. But these packages, how to pack logic into bundles, yes. Okay, my friends. Thank you so much for making it here. Have fun this afternoon. And remember about office hours. Look at your calendar. See ya.